Welcome back to Click Academics. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to solve this exponential equation. So we have x to the power of x equals x. Now what I'm first going to do is I'm going to divide by x on both sides. So we have x to the power of x equals x, and if I divide by x on both sides, well, first off, on the right side, x divided by x, well, that's simply 1, because anything divided by itself is 1. Now, on the left-hand side, we have x to the power of x divided by x. And x here, our denominator, this can be written as x to the power of 1. And if you guys recall an important property of exponents, it states that a to the power of m over a to the power of n, this is equal to a to the power of m minus n. So this is the formula for dividing exponents. So right here we have x to the power of x divided by x to the power of 1. And x in this case is a, x is m, and 1 is n. So if we put our variables into this form, we get x to the power of x minus 1. So now we're actually going to rewrite this as another, before I rewrite this, another important property of exponents is that if we have something in the form a to the power of m plus n, this is equal to a to the power of m times a to the power of n. So x to the power of x minus 1, this would equal x to the power of x times x to the power of negative 1. And this is still equal to 1. So now, if I divide both sides by x to the power of negative 1, these two would cancel out, so I would get x to the power of x is equal to, well, 1 over x to the power of negative 1, this is equal to 1 over x to the power of negative 1 is the same thing as 1 over x to the power of 1. So this would be 1 over x. And 1 over x, well, this is simply equal to x. So 1 over x to the power of negative 1 is simply just x. So now we get x to the power of x is equal to x. And now x, the exponent for x is actually 1, right? So we have x to the power of x is equal to x to the power of 1. And as you can see here, we have the same bases for both of these, meaning if we have the same bases, our exponents are the same as well. So that means if we set our exponents equal to each other, we get x equals 1. So we get x equals 1, and this is a solution. However, as you can see here, remember this equation? X to the power of x minus 1 equals 1. Well, I'm actually going to rewrite this as x to the power of x minus 1 equals x to the power of 0. Because 1 here, 1 is the same thing as x to the power of 0. Now, we're going to do the same thing what we do here. We're going to set our exponents equal to each other. So we're going to set x minus 1 equals 0. And if we add 1 on both sides, we get x equals 1. So this is another way of doing it. And actually, we have our solution as x equals 1. However, there is actually another solution to this problem. X equals -1. This would also work as well, because if we plug this into our equation, for example, -1 to the power of -1 equals -1. Well, -1 to the power of -1 is simply 1 over -1. And this is equal to -1. And 1 over -1 is simply just -1. So -1 equals -1. So this is right. So x equals -1. This is also a solution to this equation. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to solve the equation x to the power of 4 minus 16 is equal to 0. So, my only variable in this equation is x, so that's the variable I'm going to be solving for. And now for my solution. What I'm first going to do is rewrite x to the power of 4 as x to the power of 2 times 2. So now I have x to the power of 2 times 2 minus 16 is equal to 0. Now from here, if I have something in the form a to the power of m times n, this is equal to a to the power of m to the power of n. So x to the power of 2 times 2 is equal to x to the power of 2 to the power of 2. And I have this minus 16 is equal to 0. Now from here, I'm going to rewrite 16 as 4 squared. So now I have x to the power of 2 to the power of 2 minus 4 squared is equal to 0. And if I have something in the form a squared minus b squared, this is equal to a plus b times a minus b. So in this case, a is x squared and b is 4. So this turns into x squared plus 4 times x squared minus 4 is equal to 0. Now I can divide this into two equations. I have x squared plus 4 is equal to 0, and x squared minus 4 is equal to 0. So for x squared plus 4 equals 0, I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. So I get x squared is equal to -4. And now I'm going to take the square root on both sides. The square root of x squared is simply x. So I get x equals the square root of -4. Now the square root of -4 is the same thing as the square root of 4 times the square root of -1. And the square root of -1 is equal to I, so I get x is equal to 2i. And this is positive or negative. Now for x squared minus 4 equals 0, I'm going to simply add 4 on both sides. So I get x squared is equal to positive 4. And now if I take the square root, I get x is equal to positive or -2. So my four solutions are x equals 2i, x equals -2i, x equals 2, and x equals -2.